next. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and I really appreciate the hearing on this, and I thank all of you for being here today. And I think that it is going to be important that we look at the entire prescription drug chain when we're talking about possible anti-competitive behavior. The middlemen, the pharmacy benefit managers, as we have talked about more than once today, control nearly 4 out of 5 prescriptions written in the U.S. That is astounding. This is a vast arena of influence that they have over issues that end up being life and death issues, especially concerning to me is the fact that they are controlling the access to so many of these pharmaceuticals. And Mr. Mitchell, as you mentioned in your comments, this is something that is really opaque. There is a need for transparency. In addition to this, these healthcare middlemen have undergone vertical transformation that combine the PBM with insurers, specialty pharmacies, and healthcare providers. Vertical integration can result in increased inefficiencies and consumer benefits. However, such integration can also lead to higher barriers for competition in each individual market. Onerous audits, clawback provisions, and patient steering are anti-competitive behaviors by the PBMs, and as some of you have referenced today, you know that that is taking place. And they have caused small pharmacy business owners to struggle to survive. Now, in recent years, 40 states, including my home state of Tennessee, have enacted legislation to actually curb some of these PBM practices. States have also taken action against the spread pricing activities of PBMs, which have cost taxpayers hundreds of millions in the Medicaid program. So I do believe it's time for Congress to understand the impact of potentially anti-competitive PBM practices on patients, small pharmacy businesses, and taxpayers. And Senator Braun and I have introduced S-298, the Pharmacy Benefit Manager Accountability Act. And I do encourage all of my colleagues on supporting this legislation. And Madam Chair, I have a letter for the record, which is a statement from the National Community Pharmacist Association that I'd like to submit.
Be entered in.
Thank you. Mr. Levitt, if I could come to you, please. I know that Senator Grassley talked a little bit about the Senate Finance Report on insulin, and you all had an exchange on that. Let's look at the incentives in the pharmaceutical supply chain, and let me ask you how you think these incentives are aligned, if they are there to drive cost lower and out-of-pocket costs lower, that is one of the things that I hear from so many individuals. They never see the discount that is there. And there is a lack of appropriate alignment in actually lowering the cost of out-of-pocket expenses. And I know Mr. Mitchell had referenced this earlier also. So if you would, for the record, talk a little bit about that alignment.
Thank you, Senator. Yes, in our view, that is one of the fundamental problems in the entire drug pricing system today, is that the incentives are misaligned, and that savings that may exist up front in the system between the manufacturers and the pharmacy benefit managers in the form of rebates or discounts, there's no incentive to pass those on to consumers. And what we've seen is a growing trend for other entities in the healthcare system, other than manufacturers and consumers, to basically realize those savings for themselves. So that today manufacturers, for example, only get a little bit over half of the actual cost of the drugs that they're providing. The rest is going to a variety of stakeholders, including PBMs, government entities, payers, and others. But the patients, the problem is, as you pointed out, is that the patients are not seeing those savings at the pharmacy counter. And we really believe that that is an issue that needs urgent attention.
When we're talking to Tennesseans, that is one of the things that comes up most often. If it is a cardiovascular disease and they have a certain pharmaceutical or certain cancers, what they have to actually stay alive, what they need every month, and the cost for that, and that discount not going to the customer. So I appreciate that. Mr. Cates, I want to come to you, if I may. Commissioner Chopra from the FTC recently made a statement that I thought was significant. The FTC largely stood by as the PBM industry consolidated to 3 main giants and even took steps to undermine state legislation. So this would indicate that there is an intentionality to what the PBMs have done. As you now have the 3 main ones, as I said earlier, they are there at the juggernaut, if you will, for 4 out of every 5 prescriptions that are being made in this country. So can the FTC, or should the FTC do more to evaluate the anti-competitive behavior of the PBMs, or should this be given to someone else?
Thank you, Senator. The FTC absolutely should be looking at PBMs and considering whether there's anti-competitive conduct and bringing cases where they can. I do think it's important to remember that at the time that consolidation occurred, when we look at where merger law is, where the case that Senator Klobuchar talked about, which was a merger monopoly, and the court said, not a problem. If we look at other mergers that the government is losing, it's not at all clear that that FTC trying to stop those consolidation based on what was before them would have been successful given how lenient the merger laws have become. So that's not an excuse for them not to try or to look at it now, but I think it's important to understand that part of the problems we're seeing, whether it be PBMs or with branded companies gaming the system, is directly related to how we have abandoned antitrust law as a true regulator and promoter of competition.
And hindsight is always 20/20, correct? Let me ask each of you this, and I'll ask just for a show of hands. How many of you think that PBMs should be eliminated from the marketplace? There's no one who would eliminate them. How many of you think that PBMs should be reformed and that their power should be diminished? Okay, we've got one hand that is there. All right, thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay, very good.